So here's the sitch on the ATL Boxscore podcast. It's Football Friday, but at the beginning of the show, we do sprinkle in some Braves, some NBA talk, and then the football in Football Friday just takes over because we get into Georgia Tech's spring game. We also get into Mike Greenberg's comments on overtime in college. Then we have Mr. Sean McAvoy on talking NFL draft, all the quarterbacks that were in the draft in the first round, particularly. We get into a conversation with him about that. Then we look at the spring games around the Southeast, including the Georgia one, and he gives his interesting take on Georgia Tech and where the program is headed. And we also talk about, should there be a preseason game in college football? So we get into all of that and much more. You're listening to the ATL Boxscore podcast, Atlanta's newest sports podcast, and today is Football Friday. With starting a new podcast, people ask me all the time, Alex, where do you record your show at? Do you do it at your house? No, I don't do it at my house because of just a lot of different logistical factors. The place that I do it at is actually a place called Spaces, Midtown East. And Spaces is a co-working center where I get my show recorded and I get other work done. Co-working has been one of these new phenomenons in the private business sector that has popped up recently. And Spaces also has another brand called Regis, which is more of a professional brand. Spaces is more for creators like myself. But to tell you more about these special brands in the business world is Mr. Steve Choi.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate those kind words. We absolutely love having you and ATL Boxscore as part of our space. It's always great when we see you doing your work. But absolutely, Spaces and the Regis concept, we are both workplace providers here in the Atlanta area, but all around the world. We have over 250 Spaces locations worldwide, plus over 1,500 Regis locations. And what we're really here to do is just provide flexible options for any type of professional, whether you're an independent professional, creative, or if you're a large or small business. So we have several different types of options from small to large and memberships, part-time, full-time. So definitely come on out and check us out. Go ahead and look at the link on Alex's site and ask for Steve Choi. And if you ever come into one of our locations, let us know that Alex sent you or ATL Boxscore, and we'll go ahead and set you up with a free 5-day test drive.
Yeah, you can't beat that 5-day test drive. In those 5 days, you will know if Spaces or Regis is the right brand for you. And Spaces is all over the place. They're a little bit more limited, but they're in the main areas of the city. The one we are is right in the heart of Midtown, near the Fox Theater. There's one at the Battery. There's going to be one opening up North Point Mall there. And there's also a location in Colony Square. So they are all over the metro area. At just about any major business building in the Atlanta area has a Regis in it. So just Google them. But Spaces and Regis and Steve Choi in particular is your place to do your business. So Joel Embid last night. Yes, this is Football Friday here here at the ATL Boxscore. Thanks for checking us out. But we do get into our non-football minute, and that's exactly what we're getting to right now, because I have to say, Joel Embid, I know you're not feeling the 76ers, but the atmosphere, I like the new logo, I like the look on the court.
It's throwback.
They were on fire. Like I haven't seen that many people get up in Philadelphia since like Hillary Clinton was making her speech before the national election.
I don't know about that. What about the Eagles?
True. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm talking about in Philly.
Okay.
That Super Bowl wasn't in Philly.
Well, those people in Philly, I have videos of my friends in Philly jumping up and down.
I'm talking about where the game was. I'm talking about where the game was played.
And then I was like, I remember my first Super Bowl.
Yeah, because you literally went from Super Bowls to World Series to NBA Finals.
That's right.
In that order.
That's right. That's right. Don't forget our hockey team is still in the playoffs too. They went to the Stanley Cup once. Didn't win, but they went.
Okay. All right. So yeah, Joel Embiid last night went off. I was surprised. That they just destroyed Toronto. I thought Toronto was better than this.
On paper, Toronto was supposed to kill them.
I guess that last night was Philadelphia's way of saying, we're still here.
The thing about Philadelphia is, over the last few seasons, so what's not fair about Philadelphia is, okay, they've had like the number one or top 5 pick in the draft for like, I'm exaggerating, but it feels like 10 years in a row. So at some point, that had to pay off. And we're finally seeing it. So you've got like, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Butler's there. They got a whole bunch of talent. So last season, like what everybody was saying was, okay, this is our first season where the Sixers were starting to realize their potential. And this season, really, Toronto is the surprise because everybody was saying, oh, it's going to be basically Boston or the Sixers, right? They were supposed to be the top 2 at the preseason. Suddenly, Milwaukee comes out of nowhere and is like, no, wait a minute. And then they crush everybody. And then Toronto gets Kawhi Leonard, but still no one knows what that's going to look like. And then they go on a tear too. So, what's funny about it is, again, preseason should have been the 1 and 2 seeds were going to be Boston and then Sixers. Now, in reality, they're the 3 and 4 seeds, I guess. And we'll see.
Yeah. And then you also have, because I like the new logo that they have.
Yeah.
I like that they have Philadelphia spelled out on the court and like it was on the Constitution.
Right. So and then the stars.
It was just the 13 stars.
Right.
Like even the Falcons were doing that on the hat, like the 13 stars.
Nice.
That which represents the first 13 colonies.
Right. I think it was pretty cool because and it's cool to see, I like people showcasing their emotions on the court, like Joel Embiid. Like he was like doing like the airplane, running down the court and dancing for a big guy, which looks absolutely ridiculous. But it was fun. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what makes people don't realize that the kids get attracted to these sports games because of the characters, right? So like Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley, those are all characters that, depending on who you liked as a kid, you gravitated to one or the other. Joel Embiid is a character.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, too, that it's like a lot of people were like one of the ESPN commentators got a little bit ahead of himself.
I heard that.
And like compared him to
one of the greatest big men ever.
One of the greatest big men ever, yep. And it's kind of, I guess, too, like we're in an era of basketball where your guy, the 3-point shot, that you don't necessarily have to be big or anything like that. You just have to be super athletic.
Sure.
And I think we've been in that era for a while, and it's kind of just like now we see a guy like, cause we've seen it in college a lot. We just haven't seen it in the NBA.
Sure.
Where you have these big guys driving the lane, to have that kind of like tight end like on the court, and now with Joel Embiid we're seeing that, and I think people are getting a little bit too excited.
You're seeing sorry to cut you off, but you're seeing also the evolution of the big guy.
Right.
So like
I agree with that
Joel
too.
Embiid is like shooting threes. DeMarcus Cousins shooting threes. Anthony Davis is shooting threes. Jokic with the Nuggets is shooting threes, but then they're also passers. So like, when's the last time? I can't remember any time where a center other than maybe Hakeem Olajuwon that got like a triple double and assists were one of the doubles that they got. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
they don't usually
right.
pass the ball. They're usually just, here go, we're giving you the ball, you go score. But yeah, it's pretty incredible.
I have to put this in, and I'm gonna sprinkle this in, and then we're gonna move on to another basketball topic, and then we're gonna go into Football Friday. The Braves. They had a solid Wednesday night. I mean, solid. Like I said, it came back to my opinion that it was like right now what the Braves had, when it looks good, it looks really good, and when it looks bad, it looks terrible.
Gotcha.
And I think we saw that in like less than a 24-hour span.
Right.
We saw the Braves just destroy San Diego with their bats and their closing pitching, and just their pitching all around.
Yeah.
And then it's like we just saw them get worked in that afternoon game.
Yeah.
So, also, I saw something funny, though, with the Braves, the blooper, the mascot.
Yeah.
I saw this hilarious video on social media. He gets one of the guys to sign to put his signature,
Right.
and he's trying to add it like to his autograph book and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then he tears off the other like piece of paper, and it's actually a check, and he runs away with
Nice,
it.
nice.
So
Silly.
those mascots give sports a new lease in life. Now, with the last basketball topic, then we'll go into Football Friday. 8 minutes in here. The Nets point guard, D'Angelo Russell, got caught with marijuana coming into New York LaGuardia Airport.
Stupid.
I'm not a proponent for recreational drugs or my political I guess my political correct answer would be say no to drugs and everything like that. But I'm of the opinion, and we've seen this with a lot of athletes, that if you're doing it, you're on the substance, and you just want to do it, or you need it, or whatever the case may be, you shouldn't travel with it.
Right.
You shouldn't travel with it.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's stupid.
It's stupid.
Just like people who show up to the airport with guns. It's
Yeah.
like, well, you didn't. Like, come on. Where you live in a cave or what?
Oh, I forgot this was in my Louis Vuitton bag.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. So I just it's just stupid that
Especially
it's like,
when you're making that much money, and it's just it makes no sense because you can go get. It's not like you're just an everyday guy. It's like, oh, this is my last stash of weed, and
right.
I gotta take it with me or whatever.
Right.
Like, no, man, you can go have someone else fly.
It's not medical marijuana.
Right. Nah. It's
Guess
pretty
what?
dumb.
The place you go to, you can find another dealer.
You certainly can.
I mean, this guy should be connected.
It was callous. It was stupid. Again, not saying anything about him actually using it or whatever, but just being caught is just super silly.
I think it's one of those things too, Steve, where it's kind of just like these guys get X amount of dollars and they think they can just do whatever they want, and they think that money for the most part can buy you out of anything, but it's not going to buy you out of going to Rikers Island.
I think it's about what's on your mind, right? So like you and I stress off like little stuff like how do I
And
get?
am I gonna get paid this week?
Right. Or how am I getting home? Right.
Am I gonna get 1,000 listeners?
Right, stuff like that, right? And so his stuff is on a whole different level. And so this is probably just like, oh, I didn't even know it was in there.
Am I gonna be like one of your peoples?
Right.
Gonna close some workstations.
Nice.
So yeah. So that was the non-sports minute that took 10 minutes. But it was fun doing it. I hope you had fun listening. But now we're going to get into Football Friday. Football Friday is our podcast we do. We have Sean McAvoy on the show today to get his thoughts and opinions about the draft, spring football, and he is a private quarterback trainer, so he knows a lot of good quarterbacks when he sees one. He actually was training Dwayne Haskins over the past couple of years, so we get his thoughts and opinions on where Dwayne landed in the draft and a couple guys that he was high on. So high like excited, not like high like we just talked about in that last segment. I thought I'd just clear that up for you, buddy.
Right.
So we have him on this show a little bit later, but there is some things I do want to get into football related before we bring Sean on the show. And by the way, this is the ATL Boxscore podcast. If you're kind of wondering what you stumbled into, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and that would help us out tremendously. What you thought about Joel Embid or the NBA playoffs or the situation with the Braves and Mr. Russell going into LaGuardia Airport. So put that in the comment section. We'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts about those topics. Now we're about to get into Football Friday. And there wasn't, you know what? This was my bad. This was my bad coming in on Monday morning. Because it wasn't on TV. Granted, I didn't try to like go to the bar and be like, oh man, I really want to watch the Georgia Tech spring game. I just went into one of my typical sports bars and it just wasn't on TV. It was a draft. It was the Braves. No Georgia Tech. Saw some things on social media though that they had the CEO of Waffle House and Coca-Cola as one of their their guest coaches there. So I'm like, okay, bringing out the local guns, the local CEOs, because I'm assuming that a lot of those companies try to recruit those type of students that go to Georgia Tech. I'm like, okay, cool. And they pretty much, first of all, they showed out, which usually in a situation like this with a new head coach, you're always curious. And the spring game is the barometer, where your fan base is at. And you also get to see, like, this is the first time you actually get to see before an actual game what the program is going to look like. And especially, I know a lot of people in the Georgia Tech community were curious about what Georgia Tech's going to look like on offense. But they did something pretty funny the first play. They lined up in a flexbone offense, which is that option type of offense they've been running. I'm pretty sure they got some boos and everything like that. And then they broke up the huddle, or they broke up the formation, and they went into an empty set. Now, an empty set, in case you don't know what that is a shotgun set where it's just the quarterback back in the backfield, and you have 5 receivers out there. So they went from the basic like flexbone offense to automatically empty in like a matter of less than 30 seconds. So that I think that's cool. That's cool what they did. I give them a lot of props for doing something like that so bold. To line up in the old regime and then immediately say, no, guys, things have changed here. things are going to be different. That was the subtle way of saying it. And they threw it all over the field, too, which we're not used to seeing that with Georgia Tech. So it looks like they're going to be in some sort of air raid to pro-style offense with at least pro concepts and everything like that. I mean, I remember watching Temple because pretty much the type of offense Georgia Tech is going to run is the type of offense that Temple ran last year. So I remember watching them against UCF, wanting Temple to win, and they pretty much, for the most part, until they got to the fourth quarter, I mean, UCF just ran away with it. But for the most part, it's like Temple was with their stride for stride, and like that was a game where they just aired it out all night long. So I think with Georgia Tech, for the first time in a while, you're going to see them throwing the ball consistently. So if you're a fan of the passing game, I think you're going to have real treats at down there in the flats. 10 minutes away from where we're sitting right now. A 10-minute walk away from where we're sitting. Less than a 5-minute drive.
Nice.
So, So props to Georgia Tech. I give you guys a lot of props. Did well. I mean, you got as close as you could to selling out a spring game. You sold out the bowl there and everything like that. Even though Georgia, with Kirby Smart, they sold out the whole stadium. But still, that is impressive to get Georgia Tech people interested in football during when they could be doing something else, and it was a really nice Friday night. So I know they were working here. I know there was like a show at the Fox, so they got some people interested in Georgia Tech football. So props to them. Also, too, there's a new rule change that came out with overtime. And pretty much in a nutshell, I don't have like the rule right in front of me, but it's like when you go from I think it's 3 overtimes or 4 overtimes, that it's like you have to do 2-point conversions on the goal line and everything. Mike Greenberg, who is an ESPN guy on Get Up, does other ESPN shows. I think he's good all around, and he kind of has this snobbish way of coming across a lot of times. And I think he makes good points when it comes to professional sports, but he doesn't get college football. Saying majority of the things they do are stupid. Also saying the thing that got me, though, I could see that for someone that doesn't understand this type of sport. The thing that got me, though, was saying that it's like they should just go back to tying. No, absolutely not. We've evolved as a sport in college football than just tying. I mean, he draw the comparison. Yeah, I get that people could say it should be more like the NFL overtime. I get that. I don't slightly agree with that. I think there could be some things that you could that creative people could figure out with this game, but you don't go back to tying. That's ridiculous. I mean, one of the things he based his reasoning on is the MLS soccer that they do that. First of all, MLS, I think in the regular season, they have to. It's like a 70 or 80 game season. With college football, you only have 12 games, plus maybe a playoff. So that's so everyone gets that 13th game, and then 14 if you go to the national championship. So it could be a 14-game season, but it's only the slimmest of margins. You only get 12 games. You only have 12 guaranteed. And to say that you just tie one game when a playoff berth is on the line, because if you go into that many overtimes or have that situation, then those games are gonna determine a program's future for that season, and how they're going to do the next season, and probably tinker with recruiting a little bit. So saying bluntly and unpreparedly that they should just go back to tying, that doesn't even make sense. So that's my take on it. With that, two things. First, check out Spaces Midtown, like I said in the advertisement. Great provider. They're a place where I can do my podcasts. So always enjoy Spaces. But right now they have a promo code going on, and you get 15% off a 12-month deal or a 12-month agreement that for a dedicated desk, full-time office, or whatever your business needs are. Be sure to check them out. Just use promo code Alex. And again, like, subscribe, comment, especially because we're like 25 minutes into this thing. So if you're listening to this part, I'm pretty sure you like this podcast. So yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, because that definitely helps us out. And we appreciate that you're hanging out with us, whatever you're doing. If it's sitting in traffic, which I'm assuming a lot of you guys are, especially when we release this show, or doing whatever you do listening to podcasts. We appreciate you taking the time, and because we just want to hang out with you and talk some sports and hopefully get you through your day. So thanks for checking us out. This is the ATL Boxscore Podcast. I'm Alex Berger. Steve Choi was joining me into this segment. Kind of got quiet there when we were talking football, but we love Steve anyways. So yeah, well, with right now, we're going to bring Sean McAvoy on to the show, and Sean is a guy that does his thing with Quincy Avery called Quarterback Takeover, where they train up a lot of the local quarterbacks in the Atlanta area. Also, too, I know Sean goes out to places like Tennessee, and I think he has a couple guys out in Texas, but he's trained Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, just to name a few. And we always love having Sean on the show to talk about different talk about different quarterbacks. Talk about different quarterbacks and football in general. Just love having him as a springboard, and I hope you guys aren't hearing that. My computer, when I'm trying to do this like intro to Sean, my computer is like communicating to me that I need to alert or to update my software. You know how that is. So with that being said, here is my conversation with Mr. Sean McAvoy. So it is great to have Sean McAvoy back here on the ATL Boxscore Podcast. Sean, how are you doing today, man?
Alex, I'm doing great, man. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you, too. It's been a while.
No doubt. No doubt.
So, let's just get right into it. What were your thoughts about the NFL draft?
First of all, exciting. Like, I'm a big draft guy anyway. I think it's cool to see, these guys realize their dreams to play in the NFL. And obviously, as a quarterback guy, it's always exciting every year because, there's always a lot of drama around what quarterbacks are going to be taken, where they're going to go, what teams, how they're going to fit in the new situation. And certainly this draft was no different. Everybody was fired up to see how Kyler Murray turned out, like where he ended up going. Did he go number one? Where's Dwayne Haskins going to fit in? All that type of stuff. So to me, I thought it was, super exciting to see it all play out. And, as expected, at least a lot of people felt like Arizona was going to take Kyler Murray number one. So I think that was maybe the least surprise
right
of everybody. And then, of course, Daniel Jones going number 6 to the Giants was just, I think caught everyone off guard. Just one going before Dwayne Haskins, 2 going at number 6. A guy that a lot of people thought would have been available much later in round 1 is not even on the day 2. So, but man, obviously just overall opinion, Nashville looked like an incredible time. And
right, it did.
It was great to see all the fans show up. I mean, Nashville's a great town anyway. And I think we've talked about this before. I'm a country music guy, so I love Nashville anyway. And, to me, there's no better spot to just hang out for a weekend, and you add the draft to that. It was really cool for the NFL, really cool for that city to see everybody turn out the way they did.
Yeah, not if you're a bridesmaid. Not if you're part of a bridesmaid party.
That was funny, wasn't it?
That was pretty funny.
It's like it wouldn't have been that hard to figure out what else was going on in the city.
Yeah, you just do a Google search.
You're going to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, to get there and be caught off guard with it was kind of surprising. But then it's not like, how does that change your time? Like, you can still go. If anything, there's just more people there and more guys there, right? Isn't that? I don't know. I'm not a bachelorette party guy, but I thought that would have been a good thing.
Oh yeah. This is probably a subject that we should probably stay away from. Let's just focus on quarterbacks and football. So
I was 40 seconds into that answer. And I'm like, what the heck am I talking about right now?
There you go, anyway. Sean McAvoy. He can improvise on anything. So
no doubt.
Yeah. So you're not surprised about Kyler Murray because I think a lot of people were thinking Haskins was gonna go first, but
I told you this before. Dwayne Haskins was my number 1 quarterback in the draft.
Gotcha.
I thought to me he should have been the first guy to go, but I think as you were getting closer and closer to the draft, you just realized that Lincoln Riley and I'm sorry, not Lincoln Riley.
Cliff Berry.
Completely drew a blank.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cliff Kingsbury. It seemed like Cliff Kingsbury and Arizona had just fallen in love with Kyler and just thought that with what they want to do offensively, he seemed like the perfect fit. Now, I still think he's a big kind of risk, and I think there's a lot of reward there. But I think the risk could be as big as, it just doesn't work out. He gets hurt early on in his career. He just can't handle his style of play in the NFL. And I think there's a chance still that he decides he wants to play baseball. So I think there's still a lot of things that could happen here in the next 2 to 3 years. But the reward, if he can play at the level, obviously, that he did in college football, then he's certainly going to be worth the number 1 pick. I just thought other guys in the draft, especially Dwayne Haskins and Drew Lock, were less risky moves. And if you're picking that high, I think you want a guy that you think, hey, no matter what, he's going to be a 6 to 8 year starter, really good quarterback for years to come for our franchise.
I can see why you could get Lincoln Riley and Cliff Kingsbury confused because they pretty much look like the same guy. It's just one guy has a lot more grease in his hair than the other.
Well, that's right. I knew there was the big, Oklahoma and the Kyler Murray and the Texas A&M. I knew it was all connected there, and I picked the wrong name for a second. I appreciate you.
Right. They were all in that same conference at one time. But I have to ask, taking Kyler Murray, is he going to fit that system better that Cliff Kingsbury wants to run? Because it seems like, because Texas Tech was known for being a huge spread team with Patrick Mahomes and everything, and you would think that he was probably going to take a lot of that to Arizona, or at least a lot of those route concepts.
Yeah, I think there's 2 questions. One is that system going to work in the NFL, right? I think that's the first question, is how does that system in general translate? And quite honestly, this was the knock on Kingsbury when he got hired, was he wasn't really all that successful running it at A&M. You know what I mean? So now he's going to take it to the next level, and so people can guess and be down maybe on how successful I think it's going to be, but that's the first question. And then you're right. The second one was then, okay, so if we're going to run this system, then what quarterback gives the best chance to succeed? And clearly they didn't think it was Josh Rosen. they thought they needed to go get somebody in the draft to run it better than Josh would have. And obviously Kyler Murray was the guy they went over, a Dwayne Haskins or a Daniel Jones or a Drew Lock or whoever. So, but I think that's right. I mean, I think certainly if you're a first-year head coach, you want to be comfortable in whatever you're doing. And so you're going to run the offense that you think is what you're the best at calling, what you think you have the biggest chance of success. And then you want to have a quarterback who you're super comfortable with as well. So it seems to me that the combination of those two things he found, right? He found a quarterback that he obviously was super comfortable with and knew very well, and a guy he thought fit that system. So, at the end of the day, these are the guys who are putting their career on the line. No different than, a college coach who makes a decision on who he's going to start at quarterback. Those guys are putting their career or their whatever on the line with that decision. So, you can never, it's hard to be on the outside in to fault whatever they choose to do. It's going to play out however it plays out. And if they got the right guy in Kyler Murray, then great. And if not, quite honestly, then you wonder how long Kingsbury is going to be coaching in the NFL. And it's weird to put that much pressure on one pick and one player. But when you're talking about first-round quarterbacks, sometimes it's that simple.
Let me ask you about Daniel Jones, because it seems like this guy, I mean, you've mentioned him a couple times on the show, and I kind of forgot about him through all this other stuff with the Kyler Murrays and Dwayne Haskins and Drew Lock and everything. But do you feel like he is going to be the heir? I mean, not necessarily the heir apparent. He will be the heir apparent if they still keep him in New York. But do you think that he's the same type of guy that Eli Manning was? Because like all the storylines kind of seem like the same way, that they both come from a college where they were coached under Dave Cutcliffe, and they both their records in college were somewhat similar. So and obviously the programs that they went to kind of had like the same, I guess, kind of undertone to them.
I mean, that's certainly what the Giants are hoping, that they got another Eli Manning, right? And then really they're probably hoping they got a Peyton Manning, right? But that's probably what they're looking at. But I don't see it. I mean, there's just, to me, and we did talk about them on the show. We talked about who I thought were the best quarterbacks. And, I like Dwayne and Drew Lock even better than Murray. But those guys were clearly the top three guys.
Right.
And then Daniel Jones was probably the fourth best quarterback, but I think he was, there was certainly, to me, a separation between the first three and then Daniel Jones. But then Daniel Jones was ahead of the next crop, of the Stidham or the Finley or, Will Greer or whoever you put in that next crew. To me, there was a pretty clear delineation there. And even as you saw the way the draft played out, and obviously it was Drew Lock who ended up getting bumped to the second day, but I think if Lock had gone in those first three quarterbacks, you would have seen Daniel Jones still around on the second day. It's just a need thing. I think there were basically three teams that were going to get a quarterback in the first round, and they got one. So, what stands out or maybe doesn't stand out about Daniel Jones is he just wasn't all that successful at the college level. He played pretty good football, but obviously his numbers were not good. I mean, he was a sub 60% completion guy at Duke. And I know, okay, you don't have great weapons around you. There were a lot of drops that were well documented for Daniel Jones, and that's going to adjust his numbers. But, just a guy who goes out and, doesn't win a ton of games, doesn't play all that well, especially against the good teams that they played. And then really just watching his tape, there's just nothing that was that blew you away. A couple plays with his feet, quite honestly. Okay, so you can say he's a pretty good athlete for, being what he is, but, I don't think that's something that warrants a first-round pick. And just very rarely do you see a guy who wasn't that great in college suddenly become better in the NFL. And I think that's why a lot of people are scratching their heads about the Daniel Jones pick.
Do you feel like the Manning camp had anything to do with this pick?
Well, that's right. That's 100% what it is. I mean, clearly it's the being in the Manning, whatever family, if you will, basically, and then the David Cutcliffe connection, and so clearly the Giants are very well, bought into the way Cutcliffe trains quarterbacks and develops quarterbacks, and that's a compliment to David Cutcliffe.
Right,
I mean, he has a history of doing this, so. In a way, you can say, okay, well, if he's connected with Cutcliffe and Cutcliffe has coached this guy, then we kind of know what we're getting. The flip side of that would be, does he only look at all like a potential NFL guy because he's worked with Cutcliffe so much? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
maybe he's the guy who's been trained so perfectly and he's maxed out his potential at this position. And like I said, even that was not very great. You watch him play college football. If this is the best Cutcliffe could do with him, and maybe he's trained so well, so he does all the things right and he says all the things the right way, I still don't know, as he takes a step to the next level, if there's not any more upside out of Daniel Jones. It's hard to question, making that pick. And at the end of the day, if that's the guy you want, then you get him wherever you want. I don't think anybody's going to. If he ends up being the guy, then no one's going to care that he was picked 6. But it's hard to fathom him not being around. Like, who else was going to take Daniel Jones?
Right.
And so I think he definitely would have been there at 17 if they had just waited. They could have picked one of the really, impactful defensive players early on, because I think he still would have been there later on. And I honestly think he would have been there on day 2 if New York wanted to wait. So, and if he wasn't, I'm not sure you're any worse off with Ryan Finley or Derek Stidham or Will Grier than you would have been with Daniel Jones. So it's just very interesting to me. Well, like I said, the cool thing is we'll talk about it and we'll scratch our heads and we'll wonder. But until you see it play out over the next 2-3 years, you really won't know.
Right, absolutely. Do you think that they would have been better off getting Drew Lock, or do you feel like Drew Lock is in the best position that he's in right now?
That's the funny thing. I mean, obviously, each pick that goes in the draft is money off the table, right? So for these guys, you want them to go as high as they should go or could go. To max out their money in their first contract. But that being said, you take the money out of it, it's all about the fit, right? And so I'm not sure Drew Lock could be in a better situation than where he is in Denver.
Right.
I think he fixed that system really well. Now I think he would fit, the Giants system as well. I think those two are similar enough that you could see him be successful. And once again, the reason I was so high on Drew Lock was just how sound he was mechanically. Remember, we compared him to Baker Mayfield last time we talked. So you get a guy who's just really, really sound. I think he's going to be successful regardless of the system. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, you hate to see Drew Lock, who I think was the, in my opinion, second most talented quarterback in the draft, wait into the second round to get picked. But then you end up in Denver, and now, he'll enter preseason camp and everything else. And I think very clearly it's not going to matter where he got picked. He's going to use that chip on his shoulder to motivate him and fuel him even more. And I think he's a guy that, if you look 5 years, okay, who in this draft had success, who's still starting, for their team, or who's a guy that's out of the league or is a backup now. And, I would bet on Drew Lock being one of those guys who's still playing at a high level 5 years from now.
It seems like, though, that because the Broncos took Case Keenum, that they would be, at this point, since they lost Peyton Manning, that they'd be willing to experiment offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I think you obviously have to maximize whoever you have. So you have to try to, run the offense around what the quarterback you have does best. Obviously, you've seen a lot of what Drew Lock can do and probably a little bit of what he can't do, because of all the quarterbacks in the draft, nobody's played more college football than Drew Lock.
Right.
There's a guy who started at Missouri for 4 years. So So, I think what you get in Drew Lock is you really know what he is. You could say Dwayne Haskins had an incredible year, record-setting year, but it was 1 year, right? So was it a fluke? Maybe he just played really well, and maybe you don't know what you're getting. And I think with Drew Lock, you definitely know what you got. You've seen all the throws he can make. You see what system he really thrived in. And I think, if you're smart, and, especially this is where, like, John Elway is a GM and being a quarterback guy certainly helps. You bring in guys who are going to help make him successful and try to, make the offense kind of cater to Drew Lock. But you're right. I mean, based on what they have there in Denver, I think Drew Lock's in a position where, not that he needs to start week 1, but I think he's a guy that they're certainly wanting to groom to get ready to play as soon as possible.
Yeah, all the Missouri's losses that they had with him at quarterback, I don't feel like were ever his fault. It's just he was one of those guys that wasn't in a really great he didn't really have a great supporting cast. Sometimes it would be his receivers, and sometimes it would be his offensive line.
No, that's right. I mean, they didn't play very good deep. They were the one team in the SEC who didn't play very good defense.
Right.
And they were in a lot of high-scoring games, and and then, like I said, for Drew Lock, I'm sure that was pretty fun to go out there and play in a high-scoring offense and be really explosive. And that, like I said, now the game changed a little bit, and you got to make smarter decisions and smarter plays, and you can't go out and throw 3 interceptions because you're going to come back with 5 touchdown passes and things like that. Playing a little bit more of a wide-open gunslinger game at Missouri, so he's going to have to kind of curtail that just a bit, but his ability to make those kind of plays, I think, is certainly what has Denver excited. But I think if you're Denver, you feel like you got to steal, because I thought Drew Lock could have went as high as 10. You think about before the Nick Foles trade, you thought the Giants at 6, Jacksonville at 7, Miami, and then obviously Washington at 15. Like, you had 4 teams that looked like they were definitely taking QBs. And I didn't even count Arizona there, who obviously took Murray. So even when, obviously Jacksonville was in good position with Nick Foles, you knew they were no longer looking QB. You're looking at Washington, Miami, and New York all drafting high, and then, you throw in Denver, throw in there was one other team that I think was maybe looking QB early. But anyway, so I didn't think he was going to survive the first 10 and maybe 15 if he ends up going to Washington, where Haskins ended up going. That's as far as I thought Drew Lock was going to go. So for Denver to be able to pick up some guys early on and then, kind of middle of the second round, still be able to get, who I think was the second best quarterback in the draft, I think they got to be really happy with the way that turned out for them.
Well, since you mentioned him a couple of times, let's talk about your guy, Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I mean, once again, when you talk about fit, I'm not sure it gets any better than playing for, like, your hometown team.
Yeah.
Right? So here's a guy who went to high school. He was going to win either way, right? Because he grew up in New York. He did his early stuff in New York, was a Giants fan as a young kid, but then was in Washington all through high school. That's his home now. Literally, his draft party was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes from where Washington plays their home games. So that's home for him. So now you get to be kind of around your family. You get to have that support system close by, which I think is really important. And yeah, like I said, I think he's going to, be a guy that obviously Washington brought in for one reason. They brought him in to compete for the job right away and be in a position to play right away for them. I just like everything about it. I love, just this week I saw Joe Theismann gave him his blessing to wear number 7, which was never like officially retired, right? It was never like retired, but out of respect to Theismann, no one has worn it since Joe. And, it's just it's a cool like passing of the torch. There's obviously a lot of history there in Washington. I grew up in Philadelphia as an Eagles fan, and so that whole NFC East is kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm just really excited. I think the whole, obviously, storyline of him playing the Giants twice a year with who they took Daniel Jones over him, and, there's just all this great – I think the NFC East is really going to be exciting, obviously for years to come now. You talk about the young core. You talk about Dak Prescott, obviously Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins. You talk about Carson Wentz. So you're talking about some of the top, really four of the top quarterbacks who've come out in the last 3 years, and now they're all battling against each other in the NFC East there. I think that could be really fun for that division.
So do you think Dwayne Haskins could be a starter his first year?
Yeah, I think, and whether or not he'll need to be, will be interesting. But yeah, I think his mindset, and I think this is just, when you take a quarterback in the first round, I think you're taking a guy who, you're picking him there so he can come in and play.
At least starts for you like in November.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, whether it's week one or not, or if you have some way you can kind of ease him in, it's all going to depend on how he develops here in the preseason and how he, works through, those exhibition games early on and how he takes the training camp and everything else. But, assuming he's able to come in and understand the offense quickly and starts to build a chemistry, it's hard to think that the guy you just picked, early in the first round isn't better than the guys you have on your roster now, right? Who weren't those type of high-level picks or haven't produced at the level that Dwayne has, at least in college. So, I think it'll be interesting. I expect him to play early and quite honestly play well. We were talking about Kyler Murray, and I think there's a lot of risk-reward with Kyler Murray. Dwayne Haskins, to me, seemed like the most sure bet. Like, okay. I think it's very hard to imagine Dwayne Haskins not being like a solid 6 to 8 year starting quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
Like as a minimum. Now, is he going to be a Pro Bowl guy? Is he going to be a Hall of Fame type guy? I think he has a high-end potential, but I think at a minimum, he's a guy that just because he's got great size, he's a pro-style NFL quarterback. And, so you look at guys that fit that mold like a Ben Roethlisberger and guys like that. I mean, those are guys that they stick around, they play at a high level consistently, and I think that's what you get with Dwayne.
Right. Yeah. It seems like with what Dwayne showed at Ohio State that he's a pocket passer first. He does have that athletic ability, but I feel like nowadays we pigeonhole guys because they are a certain ethnicity that we think, oh, they're this certain athlete, which isn't true, because like what we were talking about last year with the draft, we were talking about Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson is that pure type of guy who you will create different plays so you can get him out in space or he can just take off, and it always seems like in the NFL that it's like that rookie season, once you have a guy like that you guys do incredibly offensively, but then it's like the next year the defenses learn how to pitch around him. So just talk to me more about just his pocket presence.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're right. You could maybe give him the compliment of being like sneaky athletic. I'm not even sure he deserves that. I mean, he's not, a runner by any stretch of the imagination. Similar to a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, similar to a guy like Aaron Rodgers, they obviously can move well enough to create a little extra time and space and move in the pocket, and can make throws, off platform, escaping out and getting rid of the ball. So he can do that. It's not that he's like stiff, but certainly not a guy you're going to see pull it down and run or quarterback run game being part of the offense. That's just not something that's going to happen with him, which is great. No, I like he's a big, strong quarterback. He's got one of the best arms I've ever seen. I've told you this from the first. So I met Dwayne for the first time when he came out to train with Quincy Avery and I in Miami for our college spring break. It was the first time I ever met him.
Okay.
At that time, he had played. He came back and won that game against Michigan 2 years ago when J.T. Barrett got hurt. But that was it. Like, he played very minimal college. He projected to be in a competition for the starting job. You thought he was going to win it, but you didn't know. You certainly didn't know he was going to have a 50-touchdown, 4,000-yard season. So it was before all of that. And he came out, and the first day, I told pretty much everybody asked that he's the best quarterback I've ever seen throw live.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I've told you this before on this podcast.
Right, you have told me this before.
Yeah. So to me, it's very clear. I mean, of all the guys I've ever seen throw, and that's numerous colleges and been around some NFL guys, I've still really to this day never seen anybody throw that well live.
Right.
He's just a depth. So that's what he is. So he's a guy that wants to, set up in the pocket, work through his progressions, and be able to just kind of let his arm do his work. He's worked really hard in the mental aspect of the game, understanding protections, understanding coverages, doing a better job of reading defenses and having to work through. It's one of the things that he and Quincy worked on really hard in his combine and his pre-draft prep is being able to kind of show coaches his ability to break down film and understand what the defense is trying to do and how to attack them. That's going to be the thing he's going to continue to try to do here in the NFL, especially as you adapt to a little different style of defensive play and a more complicated level. But physically, if he can make the right decisions and understand who's open and things of that nature, there's not going to be many throws he's not going to be able to make consistently. And that's why I'm so high on his chance of being really successful, because he's just built for it.
Right. Well, let me ask you this, because I didn't really pay attention, and I'll be honest, I didn't really pay attention or go into a deep dive into Ohio State's offense, but I know what Urban Meyer brings to the table, and I think too what people like me that just kind of just saw glimpses of him this past year or saw him in the Rose Bowl and everything like that. You think because of the system and everything like that Urban Meyer would utilize him to run the ball a lot, and also too my main question is that it's like, because a lot of these pro style quarterbacks, they need a strong running game to balance them out. Do you feel like, especially in the early ons, like that Dwayne Haskins can just carry the team by himself?
So I don't know. I think that's unfair to expect anybody to do that
right
at the NFL level. And unfortunately, I think it's one of the reasons why, I'm a little bit down on the prospect of Kyler Murray being super successful, because I think they're going to force him to try to carry the load for the Cardinals, right? But I think realistically, and regardless of where you're at, the more effective your offensive line is with their protection, the more effective your run game is. Obviously, it simplifies things for the quarterback, gives him a greater chance of being successful. Tom Brady's super successful because of how good his offensive line is, things they're able to do in the run game, to kind of put him in a great position to be successful. Now, obviously, he's incredible on his own right, but even Tom Brady isn't a guy who's going to carry the team throwing the ball 50 times a game, right? Like, so in the same mold, I think it'd be unfair to expect Dwayne Haskins or anybody that got drafted this year to try to do that. But I do think, he's got to play his part at a high level for the Redskins to be successful. And once again, we talked about this before. If you're picking in the first 15 picks, you're not a great team right now, right? It's just the way it is. You're in the bottom half of the league right now, which means that you're more than just a quarterback away, right? You still got to find some other pieces, and they certainly tried to address that in the draft. I thought they had a really good one. Picked up some really good impact defensive players. That Washington Redskins defense looks really good right now with the pickups they had, and they're able to secure the offensive line, get a couple other weapons at wide receiver. So they're trying to address those needs now, but yeah, I think I don't think he or anybody else can carry the team by himself, but I think he's going to have to burden quite a bit of the load, or shoulder rather, quite a bit of that burden or that load, for them to get where they want to be.
Right. Well, I feel like that pretty much covers it for the draft in our first 30 minutes. I want to get your thoughts on spring games that happened and what you've seen so far. Just in the SEC, because that's always like the big topic, and just around the Southeast, because I feel like with Clemson's spring game that obviously Trevor Lawrence didn't miss a beat. Jake Fromm, it seemed like he would want to have one of those throws back, but at the same time, that's what you expect to see out of the third-year starter, and same with Tua. Just what are your thoughts about what you've seen so far with the spring games?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, especially if those three teams you mentioned, nobody was competing for a position, right? Nobody's fighting for a job. So I think obviously those quarterbacks go into the situation a little bit looser.
Right.
Maybe they're now loose shouldn't mean that you play sloppily or you make bad decisions, so it doesn't excuse Fromm opening up the game with a pick six, right? Although
that guy slipped on his route they threw to, and it was a battle.
It was kind of ripped away from the receiver,
right.
But it was still like a shocking way to like open up UGA's promising season with Jake Fromm, right? But no. So I think you have those guys. They're just taking it. It's just another day of practice for them, right? This is the 20th most important day they've had over the last 6 months, right? This pales in comparison to all the big games they've already played. It pales in comparison to probably some of the work they've done in the film room. It's an event, but how important it is in their scale, they understand it. And I think that's a good thing when you have a quarterback who knows he's in that position, and obviously Trevor Lawrence too, or whether they threw for 8 touchdowns or whether they threw 6 interceptions wasn't going to matter much in where you thought they were from a development standpoint. It's really nice to be one of those teams that has one of those guys. And you're feeling really good about what happens regardless of the spring.
Yeah, it's like having a franchise quarterback in the NFL going into preseason. Yeah. Like you know that they're going to ride the bench either in the second quarter or in the third. Like you have a problem when you're playing them in the fourth quarter. But yeah, what was also to your thoughts on Jalen Hurts playing up in Oklahoma?
That's one that's a little bit more interesting because you're just so excited to get to see him and how he looks in the new offense, right? And it's kind of like the rebirth of Jalen Hurts now, who, you felt like was almost dead 2 years ago when he gets replaced for Tua and then sits out the whole year. But then we know he had to be the savior, for them in the SEC championship game. And but then was right back to the bench. So, he's a guy that I think it's hard not to root for. So I would think it was just happy to see him on the field being in charge. You could tell it was the old Jalen Hurts back, really excited. They made a big deal about the kind of the picture they took on after they scored a touchdown, and they all did the NFL style, but it's just good to see him having fun again. There's no doubt he's got to be explosive. Clearly, Oklahoma has found the model for having a really good system, regardless as they keep plugging and playing. And, of course, all really top-level quarterbacks. You're talking about the Heisman Trophy and the number 1 pick 2 years in a row. But plug and play new quarterbacks into that system every year, making the adjustments to, all right, this fits Baker Mayfield a little bit. We're going to adapt a little bit to Kyler Murray. Now we had another guy in Jalen Hurts that's slightly different than that. And it's hard to think they're not going to be super successful offensively. And just to see Jalen look really comfortable, I think is a good first step. So that was my takeaway from what I saw there at Oklahoma.
Right. Did you feel like at times he didn't seem comfortable in the Alabama system?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think it was interesting. Once again, you're talking about two different styles, like what it takes to win a game in the SEC if you're Alabama versus what it takes to win a game in the Big 12, right? When he was at Alabama, I think he was asked to do very, very little. He certainly wasn't asked to throw very much. And through the years, even as they were having success in going to the national championship game, the knock on him was he just didn't throw well enough. And he looked like he was maybe just a running type quarterback. And I think the reality was they only needed to score 15 points and they were going to win the game. And so a lot of what they did offensively was kind of built around that style of play. Then when they got into the bigger games where he needed to do some more things in the passing game, he wasn't prepared or wasn't ready or wasn't able to do it at a high level. And I think that was ultimately what cost Jalen Hurts the job there at Alabama, was they felt that Tua was a guy, and hard to argue with the success Tua's had, but looked like he was a guy who could bring a little bit more, dimension to the offense. So even if he's going to Oklahoma, that's still going to be the word on Jalen Hurts. Okay, we know what he can do. He's an explosive player. He's a great athlete. But now you got to score 40, 50 points a game sometimes to win in the Big 12. And, can he be that type of guy? Can he make enough plays in the passing game? And I think that's what's really cool about what you saw him do in the SEC championship game, because you saw him make big plays with his arm.
Right.
And that was something that you hadn't really seen him have to do his first couple of years at Alabama, especially not in crucial moments. This is the conversation we had with Tua. Remember, like, people want to talk about Tua. Should he win the Heisman? Should he do this? The problem was he never really had any tough situations. Like, he never made a big throw in on third down. Save for the big one, obviously, in the national championship game 2 years ago. But, he wasn't asked to do a lot because Alabama was just so much better than every other team. So that'll be the test for Jalen. It's not that I didn't think he was comfortable with Alabama. I just think this offense, this style of play, I think is going to fit him a little bit better, let him get a little bit more in the groove. I think he's just going to enjoy playing in that system more. And I think anytime you're enjoying playing in the system, you're certainly going to have more success.
Right, absolutely. With spring games, non-football people, it's kind of hard for people to kind of understand what it is unless you've been there, unless you've been a part of it. But since it's the off season, I just want to throw this out to you because here in the state of Georgia, for their spring games, they'll play another school, and I know you've been a part of this process before. So I'm just curious, what would you think if colleges kind of abandon this spring game idea if they want to fill up the stadium for like one scrimmage? That's their choice, but going to more of a preseason game like Clemson and Georgia playing each other, and the stipulation is that you bench your starters after the first half or something of that nature, where you play a school that's closer in your region, or Georgia, GSU playing each other that you really don't see during the regular season. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it would be super exciting from a fan perspective. I just don't see any reason or anything at all that the coaches would like out of that, right? I just don't see what the benefit would be, because I think then it becomes, that spring game's important in that it's one of your allotted 15 practices, and I think it's really important that you are working on the things you want to work on, and you're doing it in an environment that you feel like you have good control over. And obviously you don't want to see anybody get injured, so you're able to monitor how live it is or how physical. You can monitor the kind of the play calling, how vanilla the defense is going to be against what you're doing. And I get you can control all those things too. You can play somebody else and still have rules about what you can do defensively or how vanilla it can be and things of that nature, quarterbacks not being live, et cetera. But I don't know. I would think certainly in a situation where Georgia's playing Clemson or something in a spring game, the distraction of all the emotion, I think probably detracts from what you're trying to work on and develop. If it becomes a situation where you're trying to win the first half more than trying to, make decisions on who can play for you, who can start, that type of thing. I don't know. It's actually interesting. As I'm talking through it, I'm like, I can see,
let's throw like the spring game piece of it. Like, what if college had two preseason games before you actually start the regular season?
Yeah. I'm just not big on playing more games than they have to.
Okay.
I think you can make the argument that, man, by the time you get through, your 10, 11 game regular season, and then you're playing, potentially in a conference championship game, and then you have a bowl game, and then guys are playing now in the BCS, the college football playoff. Now there's, 2 games. So you're playing like 14, 15 games now. I don't know. I just think it becomes a lot, and I don't think you certainly want to add anything more to that. Would be my opinion on it. I'm not hearing any coaches saying they don't feel like they have enough time to evaluate their players, right? Or anybody saying, oh man, like Auburn plays Oregon week 1. Like, I'm not sure there's a point where Gus Malzahn is going to say, well, I wish we just had one more, scrimmage. We feel like we were much more prepared, or we have a better handle on who we want to play, that kind of thing. I think you have enough time in what you're allotted to be ready to go. And quite honestly, it's part of your schedule too. I mean, some teams don't open with a top 10 team week one. They open with a FCS school, and that kind of gives them that scrimmage. So I guess if you're a team that wants that, you can certainly create it. Yeah, I don't know.
What about with,
I think when you're good.
What about with quarterback competitions?
Yeah, once again,
you think it's enough time to evaluate?
I do. I mean, you're seeing already this year. I mean, there's been programs that have already made their decision based on 15 spring practices. Right? So it's not like they needed, and some guys are going to go all the way through the fall, and some guys are going to, but some guys already know. So if you think you already know, based in 2 weeks of the spring, then there's no reason why somebody else shouldn't know after all summer and all fall. And by then, if you don't know still, you probably have an issue, right? You probably just don't have a guy yet who's been able to separate, or a guy you have confidence in. But I don't think adding 2 more weeks is going to change that.
Gotcha. Because the only reason why I brought this up, Dabo Swinney talked about it when they were interviewing him on ESPN, and he was just like, "This is the closest thing we have to a preseason game." And he was actually one of the advocates for having some sort of preseason game a while ago before he started winning national championships. So maybe once they got the playoff and everything like that, he started winning national championships. That stuff really didn't matter anymore, but that mattered at one time.
I think the closer you get to the season, you really just start getting nervous about injuries.
Okay.
And God,
that's fair.
Even if it's your third string right guard, to see him go down in a meaningless scrimmage, and hurting your depth that way. I don't know. I think you avoid all potential of that happening. That would be my thing. At the end of the day, even if they felt like, man, we really could use one more game so our quarterbacks feel better before we play whoever, I don't think the risk would be worth the reward.
Well, one more thing to wrap up, just kind of the spring game talk. Georgia Tech had an impressive showing from a attendance record, and it seems like that they're going to be opening up the offense more, obviously getting rid of the triple option stuff, going to more of a, I guess, more of an air raid / pro offense, and I'm just curious from a quarterback standpoint. I know there's some sort of transition piece in there, but I'm assuming going from flexbone formations to empty sets is a whole lot different. So if you could just explain just how, as a quarterback, how do you transition from that type of to one extreme to the other? At least from where I'm sitting right now, it seems like that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. I mean, the hardest part of it is that you just don't have the personnel right now that you want. We're talking about Cliff Kingsbury trying to find the perfect fit for his offense that he wants to run. So when you're drafting, okay, I can pick Kyler Murray, put him in, and now I'm good to go.
Right,
well,
a bunch of wide receivers.
As a college coach, you don't have that. You're not able to do that. You can't go trade for somebody, right? So you have all these guys who are recruited to Georgia Tech to play a completely different style offense. And so now the hardest part is just transitioning the personnel. And sometimes it's position changes, right? Sometimes the guy who you brought in to be a running back in the flex bone, can't be a single back guy in a pro style inside zone scheme, right? It's just not the same personnel fit. So maybe that guy now serves you better, as a fullback, or maybe he's a tight end, or, he plays on defense, right? And I think the hardest part is just adapting the personnel you have to what you're trying to do. And that's why I think, without a doubt, I think Georgia Tech is going to have some success this year, but I don't think anyone expects Georgia Tech to contend in the ACC now.
Yeah, 10
but I think
season.
Certainly you're going to see a very clear kind of upward trend out of Georgia Tech in the next 2-3 years. They start to now go out and handpick through recruiting the players that they're looking for to fit their system, you're going to see them take, big jumps, in my opinion, as they start getting the players they want. It's not a knock. Once again, it's not that, like, the players they have now aren't as good as the players they're going to have 2 years from now. It's just all about the specific type of player that fits the system better. And I think that's going to change things quite a bit. So I think that'll be really interesting for Georgia Tech. But no doubt, I mean, it's cool to see the fan base and really the whole city of Atlanta be really excited about, seeing a team that everyone kind of loves. It's a great school, great program, a great history, obviously in both basketball and football. But I think a team that everybody wants to win. And, Paul Johnson, very well respected. But I think for the last number of years, people felt, is this really getting them to where they could be?
Right.
And I think people are excited now about the prospect of maybe they have the guy who can do that. But yeah, like you said, having a bunch of guys in the stands and, having Georgia Tech being the shotgun and throwing the ball over the field and scoring touchdowns. And, it gave the crowd a lot to cheer about. So it'll definitely be one I'm excited. I'm going to become a Georgia Tech fan here and certainly follow what they're doing.
Yeah, you're right that it's like from a personnel standpoint that there's a lot of changes had to go on this past off season. But the good news I feel like for Tech is that if getting kids out of the state of Georgia, that a 3-star wide receiver I feel like is just as good as is a 5 or 4-star here. The only difference is probably his team probably didn't go to a state championship or wasn't in the playoffs because you've seen a lot of kids that play at this high school level that that could play at the next level.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I'll tell you what, as you talk about this, the name that popped in my head is a kid named Jalen Camp, who's there at Georgia Tech. I think he's going into his senior year now. Played at South Forsyth High School. So all the way in, probably should have beat Colquitt County in the semifinal game. Mm-hmm. And that was the year Colquitt won their last state championship. So he's a kid that, big physical wide receiver, went to Georgia Tech, and obviously spent 3 years just blocking a lot, right? That was the style. So now here's a guy that he now gets to be exposed a little bit and put into this, the spread offense, and I think he's going to have an incredible season. I think for a guy like Jalen Camp, who's been there for 3 years and now gets a chance to really show what he's able to do, he had a great spring and, it's the type of guy that you wouldn't think they would have. He never seemed to really fit what Georgia Tech was doing because they just didn't throw these too good of a receiver to not throw the ball to more. And so, yeah, like to your point, there's a guy that, from this city, certainly a guy you want to root for anyway, a guy that played really, really high-level high school football in 7A in Georgia, and now he's going to get an opportunity to really show what he can do, on the college football stage. So I'm excited for him. But you're right. I mean, with the excitement comes, bigger and better recruiting. And you're already seeing Georgia Tech. I saw something the other day where they're like ranked ahead of Georgia right now in the 2020 class for their recruiting. Now, to be fair, it's a lot of 3-star commits early on. Right. The way that you just basically add up the numbers. So Georgia might have 3 5-stars already committed. And so whatever, maybe that gives you 20 recruiting points. And Georgia Tech's got no 5-stars, but they might have like 12 3-stars. And so the 12 3-stars, when you add them up, gives you more points. So when you look at recruiting rankings, eventually Georgia's going to end up getting the same amount of players, and Georgia's players are probably going to be higher rated players. Right. But as far as like early recruiting, early commitment, guys deciding I want to go to Georgia Tech over sometimes Georgia and sometimes other schools, the point is Georgia Tech's in a position now where they hadn't been in the last 10 years. Right. And they're finally a place where really good athletic talent is wanting to go play football there because they see what's going to be coming here in the next few years. So I think that's really exciting.
Well, I just know right now, just with the recruiting, that usually the top players don't usually come out this early. They usually wait till December, just from the standpoint, like a lot of quarterbacks actually come out, and this is where a lot of juniors start committing, and they try to recruit. They kind of be like recruiters for their school and try to get those players. So I know Georgia's not really in a position right now where they absolutely have to have a quarterback because they have 2 or 3 solid quarterbacks right now. So I'm trying to pull up the rankings just to, because yeah, a lot of the guys in ESPN 300 in the top 10 haven't committed to anywhere. So
yeah, no, that's right, and I think you see that, especially the way they've kind of changed now with the official visits, and they've changed obviously the early signing period and things of that nature. I think you saw last year a lot of last minute, like late moves, and almost to a negative side, you saw a lot of maybe coaches leaving late after the season, right? So
right.
I think the more you get there, the less it's in your best interest to commit early, right? And if you're a top 10 guy, you're not losing a spot. Like if you're the 5-star top quarterback prospect, you're not worried about, the guy who's the 25th best quarterback taking your spot at Alabama or whatever, right? It's going to be there for you. You saw it with Justin Fields when he was coming out, where he, was down to the last few schools late and, was one of the last people to commit. But basically every college is waiting to see where he committed and where he signed before they went to, like, their next option. So they're going to hold that spot for that guy. So I think you're going to see more and more of that. I mean, I think as these players start to understand that they hold the power,
Right.
if you're a above average player and you're just trying to get a shot and, man, maybe I can play Division I, then I think the colleges have the power, right? You need them more than they need you to some extent. But if you're in that, 0.1%, you're talking about being one of the top 20 guys in the country. You're in a position where you can kind of sit back and let everything come to you. And I think these guys are realizing kind of the power they hold a little bit,
Right.
and are able to take their time and make a smarter decision. So I think more and more you're going to see that with a lot more late commitments.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, the December signing date, a lot of those guys love to jump on that just to end it because you had, over a year where you had schools trying to call you and trying to get you to commit. So yeah, that's the great thing about the December signing date. Well, it was great to have you on the show once again. Always enjoy you. Always enjoy you coming on and getting to talk ball in the beginning part of May. Quick update I want to get from you. How's Malik Willis doing?
Good. Okay, so I thought he had a great spring. I thought he played really well in their spring game, one of the other SEC spring games that we didn't talk about. Obviously was in the competition with Bo Nix and Joey Gatewood. So they just announced yesterday, Gus officially announced that they were between Bo and Joey now. So they kind of made their decision and have Malik squarely at number 3. So he's known about for a few weeks now. Obviously they were aware of it early before Coach Malzahn announced anything to the press. So, just obviously a little blow. He felt like you were in a position to win the job, and now it seems less likely that that's going to happen. But, it is what it is. You just keep working and everything else, and there certainly are other options available to him. But right now, he's good. He's doing great. He's finishing up this semester, and he'll be home probably the next couple of days here. But yeah, I think just trying to kind of take a step back and figure out what the best move is going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sorry to hear about that, but where can we reach you at on social media?
Yeah, both Twitter and Instagram at QB Coach McAvoy are the best spots. Yeah, Twitter and Instagram, QB Coach McAvoy.
All right, well, cool. Thanks, Sean, for being on the show. By the way, too, You're still doing the Q&A, right?
Yeah, Q&A on Instagram. I finally put it on YouTube. So let me pump the YouTube channel.
Okay.
That's also QB Coach McAvoy. So all of the Q&A is going to be kind of filtered through YouTube as well. But yeah, anyway, all the social media stuff, I'm pretty easy to find.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for coming on the show today, Sean.
Of course, Alex. Always a pleasure, man.
Buddy, I don't know if you heard. Did you hear about Omaha Beach, the horse?
Being the favorite?
He was a favorite.
Yeah.
Now he's taken out of the race.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Why? Injured?
I can't remember. I think it was
did somebody poke him in the eye like James Harden?
I think he was actually like Mr. Russell, smoking too much weed.
Ooh. PEDs.
Spoken too much weed, and unfortunately, he got disqualified. So
that sucks. Wah, wah.
So if you had your money, I'm telling you right now, because it's like probably 3 or 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the East Coast, and if you have your money on him, it's time to change your bet.
Or add a little bit more spice to your mint juleps.
Right.
Or
it's time to re-strategize and...
Yeah. Just pick another... and there's like Warhammer or Iron Man or Spider-Man or something. You sure there's...
Warhammer! Warhammer. I like that. That'll be my horse. That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah. When this podcasting thing takes off, and
why not? Let's do it.
In this, in this
Warhammer.
In this, this office selling business.
Sure. Yeah, something.
When co-working takes off,
right,
and
right. My escort business.
Whoa! Gotta keep that on the wraps, buddy. Boss could be listening to this one. Whoa!
That's not the only thing I keep on the wraps. But anyway, getting back to the Kentucky Derby.
So yeah, that's the only thing I had to really say about the Kentucky Derby.
My thing is, how do you have like 3 hours of coverage for that like 2-minute race?
NBC pulls it off somehow, some way.
Yeah. So it's funny because every time, because it's usually on at the bar of the secret society that I belong to, and it's just like all you hear is like murmuring, like the crowd, rah, 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 and like, oh, and there's Warhammer walking down, and you're just like, this is the most boring coverage I've ever seen. Like, at least if they had like.
It's one of those things too. Like, yeah, if you're watching it at a bar or something like that, and it just happens to be on, it's one of those like background things. You can completely miss the race itself.
Oh yeah,
it goes by so fast
because you went to the bathroom.
Right.
And then you come back and everybody's like, and you're like, well, oh man, I guess I shouldn't have had so many mint juleps.
Or when you see the horses walking to their thing, you're just like, now is when I go to the bathroom. So yeah, if you
have to pee like a racehorse.
Yeah. Talking to our betting crowd, if you're betting on that, maybe it's time you probably changed your bet. But yeah, and this is, like I said, this is the only time we care about horse racing in this. But yeah, in this country, it's that type of season. So with that being said, like I've said before, be sure to like, subscribe, comment to us. We're also on social media. You can find ATL Boxscore on Facebook, Instagram. I think I might create a Tumblr account. I have created a personal Tumblr account so I can promote this podcast. But yeah, we are on those social media networks, and be sure to comment, especially if you liked or want to dispute something that Sean said, or we'd love to hear from you. So put that in the comment section, and hopefully you'll be listening to us on Monday or Wednesday. So yeah, thanks for checking us out, and I hope you guys have safe weekend with the Cinco de Mayo weekend. I know a lot of people, a lot of crazies are probably going to be on the road. So, yeah, if you want to be a part of those crazies, just choose Lyft or Uber. And don't be like Mr. Russell in LaGuardia. So, with that being said, yeah, check us out. And with that being said, this is episode 55. We made it to 55 episodes, buddy.
Yeah. Good job, buddy.
Made it to 55. So, that being said, episode 55 is